In the glittering, treacherous court of King Henry VIII, power was everything. Now, the Henry of this time wasn't the bloated tyrant we all picture. He was in his prime, tall, athletic, a charismatic musician and scholar. He was a true Renaissance prince, and his people adored him. But he was also a man haunted by one single failure. After almost 20 years of marriage to the respected and devout Catherine of Aragon, he didn't have a son. He only had a daughter, Mary. In a world where a dynasty's survival depended on a male heir, Henry saw the future of England as fragile and his own legacy as a failure. And then, in 1522, someone new steps onto the scene: Anne Boleyn. She had just come back from the sophisticated courts of Europe, and by Tudor standards, she wasn't a conventional beauty, but she had something far more captivating, a kind of exotic charm, a razor-sharp intellect, and a confidence that was just magnetic. She was witty, clever, and she knew how to play the courtly games of flirtation and conversation. At first, Henry didn't even notice her. He'd already had a quick affair with her older sister, Mary, and Mary, like so many others, had been a royal mistress for a time, only to be quietly cast aside. Anne saw firsthand what it meant to give in to the king, a moment in the spotlight, followed by total insignificance. She decided that would not be her story. By 1526, the king's attention turned fully to Anne, and he started pursuing her. He just assumed she'd be like all the others, honored to become his main mistress. He was the king, after all. But Anne did something extraordinary, something that defied all the rules of power at court. She turned him down flat. She would not be his mistress. The sentiment she reportedly expressed was clear: "Your wife I cannot be, both in respect of mine own unworthiness, and also because you have a queen already. Your mistress I will not be." That single no didn't stop the king. If anything, it lit a fire under him, turning his pursuit into a blazing obsession. For a king like Henry, who was used to getting absolutely everything he wanted, Anne's refusal was a challenge he couldn't resist. What came next wasn't some simple affair. It was a nearly 7-year emotional siege, a high-stakes game of hearts that held the entire kingdom in its grip. Henry, a man totally consumed by his passion, started writing to her. A series of 17 desperate emotional love letters, which somehow survived and are now in the Vatican Library, show just how lovesick he was. These aren't the letters of a calculating monarch. They're from a man completely head over heels. He wrote about being stricken with a dart of love for over a year, still unsure of how she truly felt. He hated being apart from her, writing, "Wishing myself, specially an evening, in my sweetheart's arms." He'd send her gifts, like a deer he'd just hunted, hoping that as she ate it, she would think of him, the hunter. Anne, for her part, played this game like a master. Having learned the art of courtly love in France, she knew exactly how to keep a man on the hook by stoking the flames of his desire without ever giving in. She would retreat to her family home at Havre Castle for long stretches, leaving Henry to pine for her. Her replies were rare, and her silence often drove the king mad, making him worry he'd offended her. But this wasn't just a game, it was a strategy. She had seen what happened to her sister, and she refused to be a temporary distraction. She was aiming for the ultimate prize, the crown. Before a revolution tore a kingdom apart, before a queen was cast aside and an entire church was born from the ashes of the old, there was a look, a forbidden glance. The obsession of a powerful king for a lady-in-waiting who dared to do the unthinkable. She dared to say, no. This is the story of a 7-year pursuit that ignited a firestorm, a desperate passion that changed a nation forever. The main obstacle, of course, was Queen Catherine. She was Henry's wife of almost 2 decades, the daughter of Spanish royalty, and the aunt of the most powerful man in Europe, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Divorce wasn't just a personal problem, it was a political earthquake. To the Catholic Church, marriage was a sacred, unbreakable bond. Only the Pope in Rome could grant an annulment. So, Henry's desire for Anne and his desperation for an heir merged into one single, history-altering obsession he called his great matter. He started arguing that his marriage to Catherine was a sham in the eyes of God, pointing to a Bible passage in Leviticus that forbade a man from marrying his brother's widow, which Catherine had been. He became convinced their lack of sons was God's punishment for this sin. For years, Henry's top advisors, like the powerful Cardinal Wolsey, pleaded his case in Rome. But the Pope, who was under huge political pressure from Catherine's nephew, just stalled and refused. The more the Church pushed back, the more frustrated Henry became. His obsession with Anne was turning into a national crisis. For those nearly 7 years, both of them were in emotional turmoil. Henry grew more and more desperate, while Anne was living on a knife's edge. She was also incredibly unpopular. The public saw her as a homewrecker and called her a whore. But she held her ground. She had promised the king a son, and she would only deliver on that promise as his lawful wife. Finally, after years of deadlock, they reached the point of no return. Convinced Rome would never give him what he wanted, Henry made a monumental decision. If the Church wouldn't bend to his will, he would simply break away from the Church. Egged on by radical religious thinkers in Anne's circle, Henry embraced a revolutionary idea: that he, the King of England, was the supreme head of the Church in his own country. He didn't need the Pope's permission for anything. In the autumn of 1532, believing the path to their marriage was finally clear, Anne surrendered to the king. Their love was consummated, and she quickly became pregnant. Then, in secret, on January 25, 1533, Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn were finally married. The break with Rome became absolute. An English court, led by the new Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, officially declared Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon null and void. That spring, Anne was given a coronation so lavish it was even more magnificent than Henry's own. She was crowned Queen of England, with the St. Edward's crown itself placed on her head, a shocking honor usually reserved only for reigning monarchs. For a moment, it was an unbelievable triumph. She had played the longest, most dangerous game imaginable, and won. A woman who started as a lady-in-waiting, who had dared to say no to a king, was now sitting on the throne beside him. In September 1533, the new queen gave birth, but the baby wasn't the promised son. It was a healthy, red-haired baby girl named Elizabeth. While it was a huge disappointment for Henry, they hoped a son would come next. But their victory was fragile. Anne had powerful enemies at court who were still loyal to Catherine, and the public never warmed to her. Her sharp tongue and active role in politics and religion just didn't fit the mold of a quiet, obedient queen. More pregnancies followed, but they ended in miscarriages. One of them, in January 1536, was reportedly a male fetus. For Henry, this was the final straw. His obsession, which had burned so brightly for a decade, turned to ash. The passionate love he'd written about soured into suspicion and anger. He started to believe that his marriage to Anne, just like his first, was cursed by God. His eye began to wander to one of Anne's own ladies-in-waiting, a quiet and gentle woman named Jane Seymour. Anne's downfall was terrifyingly fast. Just 3 years after her glorious coronation, it all came crashing down. Her former ally, Thomas Cromwell, now saw an opportunity to get rid of the unpopular queen. Suddenly, shocking accusations appeared out of nowhere. Anne was charged with adultery with multiple men, including her own brother, and of plotting to kill the king. The charges were almost certainly fabricated, a convenient legal fiction to get Henry the divorce he so desperately wanted. On May 2nd, 1536, Queen Anne was arrested and taken by barge to the Tower of London, the same fortress where she had celebrated just before her coronation. Her trial was a complete sham. On May 15th, she was found guilty of high treason and sentenced to die. Even in her final days, she kept her famous composure, reportedly joking about her little neck. Henry gave her one small mercy: an expert swordsman brought over from France instead of the clumsy executioner's axe. On the morning of May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn knelt on a scaffold inside the Tower walls and was executed. The great love affair that had remade a kingdom had ended in brutal, bloody tragedy. Just one day later, Henry VIII was formally betrothed to Jane Seymour. So was this just a scandalous love story? Not even close. This affair completely redefined a nation. To marry Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII broke England away from the authority of the Pope, creating the Church of England and kick-starting the English Reformation. This single act of personal passion had permanent political and religious consequences that shaped the country for centuries. And though Henry tried his best to erase her from history, Anne's legacy would ultimately survive through the very person he once saw as a disappointment: their daughter. Elizabeth I would grow up to become one of England's greatest monarchs, her long and brilliant reign a silent testament to the mother her father had so brutally discarded. Theirs was a story of obsession, ambition, and a love so powerful it toppled an old world to build a new one, proving that sometimes the most intimate desires of the heart can have the most earth-shattering consequences. If you enjoyed this journey into the scandals of the past, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell for more stories that change the world. Let us know in the comments which historical affair you think we should dive into next.